Welcome to That Could Have Been an Email. I'm Leslie Bailey.
And I'm Ron Shaw.
And we started this podcast to discuss the good, bad, and ugly of project managing, bring humor to our everyday project management and client situations, and a place to commiserate on all those things that our partners, friends who aren't in the industry never understand. Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 8 of That Could Have Been an Email. I'm Leslie Bailey here with Ron Shaw. Welcome, Ron. Happy Friday. We're almost there.
Hello and happy Friday. Yay, we're there and going into a nice weekend and changing of the month soon here. So I think by the time this episode airs, we will be into November. Amazing how quick another year has
When
gone.
When do we fall back? Does anybody know?
Second Sunday in November. It's coming up soon. I was really hoping they would do away with that.
I know. I don't get it. I've never understood it. And now that I have a kid, it's even worse. I don't understand, but
the fall hurts less than the spring.
It does. Yeah. Yeah. The fall back is a little bit different than the springing ahead and then them getting up earlier. But I've never understood the time change. I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense to me. Let's start another movement.
And
get it out of there. Well, because I used to hear, and this was years ago, people who would use the excuse like, oh, my alarm wasn't set, or, when they would be late for things. It's just funny because it doesn't make any sense at all how you could use that as an excuse, but a bunch of people did. So hopefully maybe next year, maybe we'll get rid of it. But for now, it's annoying. And I think everything's
thumbs
pretty
up
automatic
emoji.
though. Yeah, thumbs up. High five. Praise hands, right? So we'll look to hopefully get rid of that next year. Maybe by next year when we're doing an episode. I won't ask you when we fall back because it won't be a thing.
It won't happen.
We'll see. We'll work on that. We'll start another campaign to dive into that. But speaking of emojis and ways to communicate your feelings, that's what we're talking about today. Not necessarily communicating your feelings. I'm sure we could have a whole other episode for how you do that. But emojis and communication, when it's appropriate, when it works, what people think of it, and when people use it. So it's funny because we were just talking about the thumbs up emoji. I used it yesterday. I think you said you just used it today. And do you ever catch yourself on who you use it with? And the reason I asked that question is because you were just reading an article that said it's technically passive. Sure, it can be in some respects. But at the same time, if you're in the middle of something, if you're in a place where you can't really text or type, and that's the one thing to send, to me, that's not really passive because you're really just trying to give a reply quickly. So what do you think of that? Do you think there are certain situations where it could be seen as passive, or do you see it as just a quick communication tool?
I think it can be passive, and depending on the use. So to your point, when it's the quick response, it's like, okay, it's built in. And I think this comes from the nature of Facebook, because that's really where the thumbs up started, at least as far as I can remember. It started there with the thumbs up for liking something.
Yeah.
And then it's just kind of spread across other platforms. So you see it in Slack, you see it in Teams, Skype, when that was a thing, if that still is a thing. It was in those, and like it was the thumbs up of like, okay. But I think sometimes I use it in multiple ways. One, if we're going fast and it's just like, I've got a lot going on, I want to acknowledge you and let you know, yes, I've seen this. It's like, thumbs up, we got you. But sometimes when you've got people that continue to keep going, like they're over explaining something, then they got the thumbs up. I got it.
That's the passive one.
That's when it hits the passive point.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I go for the thumbs up most of the time this is annoying, and I've tried not to do it to other people because I get annoyed by it. When you're presenting something on a call and people are slacking or teaming you on the side, and I don't know why people choose to do that unless there's something incredibly embarrassing or incorrect on your screen. I don't know why people do that, thinking that you're going to present and team them at the same time. I don't do that. It's not something I can actually do. So I do it then. If somebody is asking me to, will you make sure you call this out on the call? I'm just going to send a quick thumbs up to tell you I saw it. I will get to it, but I really need to concentrate on what I'm actually doing. So in that regard, that's where it is the quick reply for me. I'm not going to lie. I've definitely done the passive thumbs up. When I'm getting a constant reminder of something that I'm already aware of and that's already on my list, that's when you're going to get the passive from me because I know about it. It's on my radar. It may not be on your time frame, and that's why you're sending me a reminder, but I got it.
Right.
So
It's
that's when yeah,
it's that no shit.
yeah,
Got it. Thanks.
yeah.
Hitting that point of just it's kind of like yeah. The other thing that makes you think like especially with the thumbs up and when you have different options now. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the messenger platforms have added to where you can do multiple types of emojis in there or emoticon, however you like
Yeah.
responses. And sometimes it can make you think because if you put a message or a post like in Teams or something like that, and you get a bunch of hearts, but then you've got the one person that gave you the thumbs up, it's like, what exactly did I do that you didn't want to put a heart there? Is it just
Yeah.
you just don't care about this?
I sometimes see that too. I see it a lot on Facebook. And you know, is it is it something where you felt like you had to give support, so you just gave a thumbs up, you didn't really care about it? And that could be said in Teams or Slack too. If you just were like, I have to acknowledge this, so I guess I will, and put the thumbs up instead of a heart or a star, whatever. Um, to me, anyway, from my perspective, that's when I'm just acknowledging something, but I don't have any feelings toward it. Is if I would do a thumbs up instead of a heart. So that I get. I think you get the obligatory on Facebook, like family likes too. Like where they, and I mean, I'm sure I get them too on mine, but like when they put up a post of their kids or, something
Right.
like that, you do the obligatory like. And I think that's where that comes in is not necessarily passive, but you feel like you have to.
Well, it's then too, and then sometimes trying to understand what people mean, and I think this is part of what spawned our conversation about this to bring it into a topic is: are you always matching the right emotion, or are you
Mm-hmm.
understanding the emotion that the person's going to put in? Like, perfect example for me is sometimes when people put in the laughing guy, and I'm like, why are you laughing at this? Like,
Yeah.
especially if it's something to me where I'm being serious, and all of a sudden I see the laughing one, I'm like, are you not understanding that I was being serious here, or is this meant in a
Mm-hmm.
different way?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, from the Facebook side of things, I see those like depending on what political party you are, that's your business.
Yeah.
But when people, you can tell the people that don't support it because they either put the mad face or the laughing face
The
at
mad
whatever it
face.
is. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my
That's a
God,
big one.
that's passive. That's just like, oh, passive to the extreme.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the mad face obviously with midterms coming up, I've seen a lot.
Yeah,
And I mean, I think it's so dumb because if it really makes you that upset, just
ignore it.
don't put an
Delete it.
emoji up there. Just leave it. But a lot of the times I do see on articles the laughing face where I'm like, wait, what is this actually about?
Yeah,
Because that's like the only one there. So it's I think with so many people having different degrees of context and what those actually mean,
right.
um, it it doesn't make sense on half the things that you see. So I try to only use them in Teams or Slacks. I barely use them in emails because, if you think back to our early days when we worked together, I was told once that putting a smiley face in an email is unprofessional. So I was like, okay, I'm never going to do that again. But then I would have a client do it. So I was like, okay,
Right.
wait, is it okay if they do it first or if they do it back? So I, when it comes to emails, to me, I just base mine off of who I'm talking to. So if it's a
Yeah.
client that's super straightforward all the time, I'm probably not going to send them a smiley face. I'm going to keep it to just text. But if it's somebody that I've worked with before, I know their personality, I know it's safe to,
Right.
and for anybody who's not watching it, put that in air quotes, to send them an emoji, I will do that. So how do you kind of do that in your email communications versus your IMs?
So I think it's your point. It's based on the relationship that I have with the person.
Mm-hmm.
If they use one first, I consider that open season to lightly use emoji. I
Yeah.
don't. It won't go like stacking them up in there like smiley face, smiley face, smiley face.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
it's in an appropriate context. But one thing I've actually learned is there's also a generational challenge with this, because
Yeah.
with the
Mm-hmm.
younger millennials to the Gen Z, uh, for them it's almost an insult if you don't have an emoji in there. Like if you say thank you, but you don't have like the smiley face, that makes them worry. I would
Uh,
love to have like a conversation more with someone from that generation, but everything I've read is by not using that, it actually creates discomfort for them because they're so used to
yeah.
having that. They've grown up texting, messaging that way, where we had more of the traditional writing. So when you don't have those in there, it can cause discomfort for them of like, oh my God, are you
Hmm.
really not happy, or are you not authentic with what you're saying? Whereas for our generation, it's kind of like we can go with or without it. It's
Yeah.
if I see like six smiley faces after something, or even then it goes to how many exclamation points are used when you say something.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's that barrier of like what is too much, and then understanding generational, because and then if you're dealing with someone that comes from the baby boomer generation or
Yeah.
earlier Gen X, you don't need all of that because we're just more of a cut and dry, like here.
Hmm. Hmm. I mean, that's an interesting read. I would love to read something like that. And I'm going to have to ask my nieces about this too, because they're obviously a generation, which it's funny. I'm a millennial. There's days I do not feel like millennial, many days I don't. But I'm I'm going to identify more with the boomer generation here, where I think that's ridiculous that you need an emoji um to to confirm or kind of establish even more
Mm-hmm.
what the conversation is or what the reply is, which everybody's different. So nobody get offended that I just said that. But it's, and I can see why that is a big generational gap or a big miscommunication, because if one generation sees that, why do I need to kind of send you an emoji to convey feelings when we're literally talking about a project or a business
Right.
role? Why would I need to send you a feelings emoji? Which totally valid. But on the other end of that, like you're saying, if you it's how you read the tone too. So if you send me back one short sentence, there's no greeting, there's no salutation, I'm going to think you might be kind of pissed about something or that it wasn't to your satisfaction. So then I can see why, yes, they want that emoji to be like, is this okay? Was just this a
Right.
quick response, and you're just firing it off. So it it always gets complicated because I can see both sides.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting what you're saying there is it really is good. And I think this was the part of the original purpose for emojis was to help draw that emotional feeling, because
Mm-hmm.
in writing you don't always know how the person's delivering that, because it can come off very flat and they
Right.
may not mean it that way. So if you say something and then you add a smiley face, great, that they're saying it in a fun way.
Mm-hmm.
Or if there's an unhappy face, it's an unhappy way. uh,
Yeah.
so having that as a reference point is great. But then there's some of them that if I were to get these emojis, I don't understand what they mean. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I have to look it up. Like the one where the person's got one eye open and one eye half closed and the mouth's got the tongue sticking out. I'm like, what are you trying to tell me
That means
here?
something's not getting done.
To me, that says somebody's
Yeah.
emotionally unstable at the moment and might need some help.
or they hit the wrong one. Like their thumb was just going too fast and they hit the wrong emoji. That's where I get caught up too, because you and I were talking about this a little bit before we got on, where if I get a thumbs up from certain people, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But if it's from other people who, if I've worked with them in the past and things are late or things are misunderstood, and I send you a reminder, I get a thumbs up, I'm not always completely comfortable with that, because I have this kind of track record in my head about what our experience has been like. So I think it goes back, and we've talked about this multiple times, to, again, interpretation, but
Right.
knowing that relationship enough to know which ones you can send, which ones are actually going to convey some kind of message, um, to where that person is satisfied with the reply.
Yeah. And so what is your least favorite emoji to see, because I think this can be across what you have from a work side or personal when people text. Is there one that just when you see it you just cringe?
Um, I mean, I definitely don't like the barf face. And I like this just shows you what we talk about. My sister and I send the barf face to each other like a lot. So granted, it's usually with kid stuff that we're talking about. So to give you context, we're not just sending like gross
Just
stories to
barf
each
to
other.
each other.
Yeah. Um, so but if we're talking, I mean, probably the thinking face because I don't get anything from that. So if you send me like the confused thinking face, did you not understand what I said? Was my question weird? It doesn't go anywhere. So probably that one because it's just like it's the equivalent of somebody writing you back, okay. Cool. What do we do? So that's probably the one because it doesn't conclude your conversation, doesn't add to the conversation of solving the problem. Probably that one. So what about you? What makes you cringe?
Oh, mine will is and always will be the
Yes. Yeah,
hands
the
up on
shrug.
the I don't know shrug
Mm-hmm.
drives me insane.
Mm-hmm.
I get the purpose of it, but it's just something about it. I see that and I'm like, no.
Well, because like it also I see it, and I mean I've probably done it before, but I will tell you, I've only done it in text. I don't think I've ever done it in a professional setting because
Right.
I know how annoying it is. But if I'm asking you a question, I'm obviously asking for a reason. So why would you give me the shoulder shrug?
Yeah.
Like I'm not
Yeah.
asking just to, get my feelings out.
Professionally, I don't think I've seen that as often. Once or
Mm-hmm.
twice, I've seen it maybe come up, but in personal and text and stuff like that, it definitely comes up
Yeah.
more. From a professional one, I think the one that bugs me the most is the laughing because I don't know why people are laughing. Sometimes I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to understand, and I look at in the context, like, but why?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think in emails, I've probably only ever used a smiley face or
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's the only ones I've ever used. And I mean I don't use them often. I can't tell you the last time I used one. But now you've got me curious about the other emojis that I see. I'm like looking through them as we're
Well,
talking. I guess I use the happy birthday one a lot. But like,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Well,
yeah.
and the other thing, so I recently have started using Slack
Mm-hmm.
more often, and they actually have a much wider variety than what I was seeing in Teams for emojis. Like you can add a lot more feeling. Like you can even create your own emojis in there. I'm like, well,
Ooh,
that's pretty cool. I'm like, but
yeah.
I would have to understand what some of them are because when you start creating your own, it has to be relevant for people to understand what exactly it's trying
Right.
to
Yeah.
indicate
And
to
yeah, I
other
mean, make sure
people.
people get your humor before you go
Right.
sending
Yeah.
those
And
out.
that could be dangerous.
You might
uh,
have an HR issue on your hands if you send a
mm,
personal one out.
but I think to your point though, from like an email perspective, my emails will normally be a smiley face, but it's normally you might get one smiley face in an email. There's never really a
Mhm.
reason for multiple smiley faces.
Well, here's my question about the smiley because I will admit that I've done this before. Have you ever had kind of a troublesome client and they either ask you for something repeatedly or just remind you repeatedly of something and you send back, we're working on it with like a smiley face just to like get them off your back?
um, I'm sure I've done that before.
That's when I've used a smiley face.
I use it normally again if it's someone I'm talking to, or I'll say like on a Monday morning email if I'm following up. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
hope you had a great weekend. Smiley face. Then go into
Mm-hmm.
whatever I say because
Mm-hmm.
I with my own emails, whenever I start a conversation, if it is like the first of a week or the first I'm having with this person, I want to actually greet the person and be like, "Hi, I realize you're a person. I'm not just going to start barking out stuff to you. I want to say,
Right.
hey, hope you're doing good. How are things going? Because I actually
Mm-hmm.
care about you as a person. Maybe not to like a full like, oh my god, your family care, but you're a
Right.
human being, and then I want to acknowledge that you have a life with other things happening.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when like something like there in the intro, I'll put that. Or if there's like a personal joke as you build the relationship, you can add it at the end of the personal joke or whatever that you put in there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just making sure there's a reference point when it's professional, at least from an email perspective, and then from the messaging internally, that's a different game. It's all depends
Yeah.
on the people in the team you have a relationship with, because I've worked with teams where I don't mind that as much because it flows. If it's part of the conversation, great.
Mm-hmm.
uh
Mm-hmm.
but when it emails, I'm a little more old school formal.
Yeah, I agree. I think I kind of take the same approach. Um, just because typically if I'm writing you an email, I'm not writing you about something that has like a smiley face or a heart,
Right.
if you will. I'm writing you about a task or maybe a problem. So I don't usually use that. The other thing I don't do that I've seen other people do is I don't use a sad face a lot in IMs. And the reason I don't do that is because I feel like it fuels more of the problem. Like if you're talking about something that was obviously inaccurate, if you're putting a sad face, or a client challenge, it adds more to the problem. And to me, I don't want your feelings of pity or feeling sorry for whatever the problem is. I'm reaching out for help or I'm
Mm.
reaching out for opinions and ideas. So I don't think I've used the sad face a lot. I don't see that one as much as laughing or thumbs up. So what do you think about that one? Do you see it a lot?
Occasionally, I don't see it as much. Like sometimes it will come up in the chats. If I can make sense of it, I don't worry as much. If it's in response to something I say and I don't understand why there's a sad face, I'll call it right. I'll be like, why
Yeah.
is there a sad face? What got you burnt about that? Trying to understand and read that type of emotion from people. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. The worst is when you have to send back the question mark.
yeah, it's like, Porque? What?
Because then if
What's
you have
going
to
on here?
explain an emoji, there's something wrong. That's if you
Right.
have to
It's like
explain what it is.
you have now confused me with your emoji. Please explain.
Which I mean, that's happened with my husband before where he'll send me a random one and he'll be like, I was just testing them out. Okay. Well, don't do that because
Gotta
then
go
I'm like,
through.
what are we talking about? So if you ever do that, make sure you do it with like a friend instead of a colleague because that's just gonna go into a circle of conversation that you probably don't want to enter into.
And I think my other one is that, and this is a pet peeve with emojis, is
Mm-hmm.
overuse of the heart emoji. It kind
Yeah.
of goes back to where what we were talking about last week with the I'm sorry, and
Mm-hmm.
people
Mm-hmm.
overusing the love term
Yeah.
in a business setting. Because I don't think many people have that strong of an emotion,
Mm-hmm.
or they just do it so much. It's oh love this, oh love this, oh love it kind of takes out that genuine feeling
Yeah.
from it.
Yeah, for sure. And then like, I mean, this is just me again. I feel like if I'm constantly sending you a heart for helping with something or answering my questions, it makes me feel like I'm almost kind of indebted to you in the future if I constantly love all the help you're giving me. So that's my own personal hang up, full disclosure. Um, if anybody else does that, but that's, yeah, I think it does lose its context because if I would constantly be sending you copy or
Right.
marketing materials that I've created and you just constantly heart them with no feedback, it loses it for me. Like, are you just doing this to kind of check it off the list and let me know that it's good? Or are you actually looking at it?
Yeah, it's use your hearts sparingly to
Mm-hmm.
really, that way when it's something really impactful, it you can do it there. And maybe sometimes people it is impactful, but I don't think to the degree that some people they just heart everything,
Yeah.
or they even put it in emails like, oh, heart this, heart that.
Mm-mm.
That's when I would come back with the vomit emoji.
No, no, the barf emoji. Yeah, I think, well, and like you're saying, you can't heart something that much. I mean,
Right.
maybe you can. I physically can't. So maybe we need to dive deeper into
Maybe
that.
we have some problems likely that we need to look into.
But it's, yeah, it just loses, I mean, it loses its luster. Like
Right.
if you get of, you know, especially from a director or manager, if you get a heart for the first time, like, yes, you know, this, whatever I created is really good. But then if you start to get those all the time, it loses its effect on you as well. So
Yeah.
then you, to me, start questioning if your work is as good as you think it is, or if it just passes the test every time of just being satisfactory.
Yeah. And I was having a thought as you were talking about that. And when it is used for the responses, so for people not familiar that may not use Teams or Slack or something like that, you have the
Mhm.
option to use. They have preset emojis that you can use and select as like a response to something that someone's typed into the message.
Yeah.
Uh, and thinking about this, it's sometimes it leaves the question, like we auto response to this. It's an acknowledgement, that's great,
Mhm.
it's appreciated to be acknowledged, but sometimes you actually need people to respond and say something about what you provided, and they just give it there. And I guess that can go back to making sure if you need a response, indicating that you need a response, otherwise you're
Mhm.
just going to get a thumbs up on something versus someone saying, yes, this looks good, or like just,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes you do need that acknowledgement from people, not that, oh, good boy or good girl, you did a good job here.
Mhm.
Just, yes, we've seen this, this makes sense, thank you.
I'll give the perfect example of that because it used to happen to me a lot. When you put a call agenda into a group team or a group Slack and you say, please review this, let me know if you want to add anything, and you get all thumbs up. Okay. Does that mean you actually looked at it? Nobody adds that. I mean, it's super frustrating
Yeah.
because then what's happened to me in the past is you get to the call and somebody asks you what we're talking about. Well, you thumbs upped it, so I'm a little confused. So that's where I think you also need to factor in that respect as well, is
Right.
when you're sending that, is if you're gonna send an emoji like that that acknowledges something, make sure you actually looked at it or acknowledged it.
I would very much agree. And you know that extends as well to when people use memes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Memes and emojis kind of they're in that same wheelhouse for me of just make sure it's appropriate when you use it, because it would be the same thing for adding memes into emails.
Yeah.
Make sure it's the right audience with what you're adding, and make sure people are understanding or have a base understanding of what you're putting
Mm-hmm.
in there before you do it.
Well, make sure they have the same sentiment, right? I
Right.
mean, I could send you an angry face over a task and you'd be like, what's the big deal? It's
Right.
not hard. Um, I mean, that's happened to me a couple of times with just different tasks or different challenges that we have. And another team member is like, I don't understand
Yeah.
what's the big deal, or why are you so invested in this person's response, or something like that. So it's just kind of knowing if they have the same feelings about it as you do, because then it goes into kind of just a weird area where now you're wondering if you overreacted or if it's just a personal feeling that you have. And I mean, that just adds more to what you're already feeling about something.
Absolutely. And I would actually be interested to have the audience post when after they're watching this.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to have everybody share in the comments your favorite and least favorite emoji. I think that would be an interesting buildup of everybody posting that to see the different ones that show up in there. Because I have a feeling it would vary from people to people of which ones really get
Yeah.
them that they don't like seeing. Uh,
Yeah. Actually, in the Justin Long podcast, Life is Short, he will ask every guest what their most used emoji is. And it's funny because then he puts them in the episode and
I don't
you
even know what mine is. It's because so I'm old school and I've been told this. This is where my age actually shows up, because there was, prior to emojis, there were emoticons, which is when it's
yeah.
just type characters. And I
Yeah, you
still
had to
do
figure out
those.
what it was.
I still do those. I can't help it. It's like for my smiley face, it's the old school, uh, semicolon end, wrap
Yeah.
it there, and that's it. That's what I do.
If I look at my list right now, my most used one is the crying laughing face. Which I guess is good in a way. If we're talking about whatever context my messages are in. But that is my most used one, let's say over this last like 2 weeks.
Mine is a star.
Ooh, who got a
I,
gold star?
I try to do different. So my most used one, at least for the last few weeks, is a star.
I've never got a star from Ron. Everybody said I'm gonna be looking into that and
You don't text
interpreting
me.
why.
That's for my text.
Oh,
That's
okay.
only
Okay.
text. I
The
don't know if I can
text.
see what it is on my chats, but
Got it.
only on the text.
Oh, but you know what? I did get like a blue star from you in a G chat. So
Yes.
I'll okay, a G
Yes, you
chat,
did
if
get a
that's even what you
star.
still call it.
That's what I
Showing
call
my
it.
age there. G chat. But yes, I did get a blue star, so I take it back. I did get one of those.
And that's what I'm trying to expand my usage instead of just smiley face, because
Mhm.
that's all I really tend to use before was just smiley face or thumbs up.
Yeah.
They're the
Yeah, the
quick two
thumbs up.
there.
I mean, I'm going to be very aware of my thumbs up now. I'm going to be aware of if I was sending it passively or
It's
just
like
to let
thinking
you
about that,
know that
like
I saw what you put in. Ooh, if
it's like
anybody a team with, look out.
they need to have a check mark. That can be the
Yeah.
understood versus the thumbs up of like cool.
But that's another conversation that goes into, and I'll call out teams because that's what I use mostly, is when you see the little eyeball. That drives me nuts when I see the eyeball that you read it and it goes on for hours without any acknowledgement. That's where it's like the eyeball gets you in
I,
trouble. It's like the red receipts on your text. When I see that somebody text read it and just didn't answer it,
I
makes me
I
a little
have
crazy.
I have to say that is one thing I am liking about my shift over to Slack. There's no
Mhm.
eyeball, so I don't know if people have read it and just ignored it, which makes me
Oh,
feel better because I'd rather not
yeah.
know if somebody's
Ignorance is
yeah,
bliss, right?
ignored it. Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
It's like great. If you're ignoring me, that's all on you. I don't have to see this little eyeball going, okay, you've read it, but you've
mm.
decided with 48 hours not to respond to what I've
Plus,
said.
that's the one time where you could be like, oh, no, I didn't see your message.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I don't, I
Yeah.
mean, I used to use Slack and I don't remember that, but I probably wasn't watching eyeballs as closely as I do now for acknowledgement. That's super interesting that there's like nothing on there, but that's kind of helpful in a way because neither one of you know if the other one
Uh,
has read it or
you
what they're
just
thinking
know
about
they
it.
probably haven't seen it yet. That's the way I
Mhm.
look at it. And it's much easier to think of it that way versus you're ignoring me.
Completely. Yeah. Like, I mean, my mind always goes to that. Like, it's just, but I'm one of those people that with email and IMs, I have to get rid of them, even
Yes,
text.
yes, yes.
So if I saw what you said, but I don't know how to respond yet, I'm going to just acknowledge that I saw it because I can't stand not doing it. And I mean, I can't have more than like 5 emails in my inbox. Like, I can't do it. My
Uh,
Gmail drives me insane because there's like thousands of them in there. But yeah.
we are definitely of the same cloth there because
Uh,
I cannot do I if an email comes in, I will open it. And even if I can't
mhm.
answer right then, I open it because I cannot stand the
Yes.
alerts, the little notifications, the little bubbles that show up. Same thing on my phone. I have to clear the alerts.
Mhm. Mhm.
And obviously I know to those who are going to say this, yes, I know you can shut them off, but you kind of need them sometimes to actually
Right.
know when something's come in.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's like that opening my inbox and seeing unread, I have to get them away. Like, it cannot be that way for me. Same thing with messages, but it's also built into me from years of working in a service industry.
Mhm. Mhm. Get
I
rid
need
of
to
them.
respond.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
I personally hate waiting for responses.
Yeah.
So it's like I want to give that right back to someone like, hey, I'm going to make sure I get your response, even if it's something I know takes longer. I'm going to get
Mhm.
you the initial response and say, I'm aware. Thank you. Looking into this.
Yeah.
Just something because I don't want someone to feel unacknowledged. It's like I
Mhm.
wouldn't like it, so I'm going to pay you the respect that I would want.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's how I am too. I mean, I'm the same way. If there's a notification that pops up, I have to get rid of it. I've even done it during this podcast. I can't have it on there. It just drives me insane. And then if you look at my mom's phone, oh my God. Oh my God. There's like a notification for everything. And she just leaves it there. And I'm like, I don't know how this doesn't drive you just mad with how many notifications there are. So yeah, it's definitely a control thing with me where I have to acknowledge that I saw it. And it helps me remember that I need to do something about it or reply.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I think we are at the end of this episode. We've had some fun talking emojis. And again, make sure share in the comments your favorite and least favorite emojis. I can't wait to
Yeah.
look at those. And if we get enough of those back, we can share on a future episode what one is the most favorite, least favorite for
If there's
that.
like a unicorn or something, you're going to have to explain why that is your most used emoji.
Yeah, if it's an unusual one, please explain. Please explain. Provide a little reference as to why you don't like it. That could be helpful.
Oh, yeah.
Also, to follow up, Leslie, we've been doing the number of downloads so we can give to the Children's Fund at the end of the year, and I am happy to report. Just prior to recording the show, we are at 214 downloads. So that is
Yay. Praise hands
$214
emoji.
for charity. Again, we've got more episodes to go. So please and thank you. Keep downloading, listening. It is appreciated and it will go towards a good cause at the end. So fun episode. We will see everybody next week. Leslie, have a great one.
Thanks. You too. Bye, everybody.